It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. This week starring Get Your Instrumental Cue Reviewed. Yeah, baby. Woo! I'm zoomed in a little bit. Again, that problem? Hang on, folks. Let's see if we can solve that.
You should be able to fix that.
Should be.
Without having to take it off. If you need help.
There it is. It's fixed now. Right about now, it should be getting smaller, right?
I'll let you know.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good.
All right. Anyway, welcome to the big show. Let me get the chat room open. Can you double check the air conditioner, please? And hope everybody had a great weekend. Just going to spend a minute on my weekend because I know you guys were all dying to know, what did I do this weekend? Well, I tell you, we went to one of those farm thingies, you know, like when your kids are little and you take them to like a petting zoo and an apple or pumpkin picking place. So we went there and I fell in love with the goat. I decided to leave my wife and marry this goat. Look at that. Look at the blue eyes on that goat. I know it's not exactly optimal the way I'm showing you, but the eyes are like the headlights of a Volvo. And so I was telling the girl that was in charge of the goat pen how much I loved the goat. And she said, you can buy that goat. It's $200. It was all I could do to resist buying the goat. But you had to buy two at once because they were brother and sister, and goats don't like to be alone. And we found out we could actually have goats in our backyard. But the timing was bad. So we didn't get any goats yesterday, but I have a feeling that there are going to be a couple of small goats in our future. Anyway, that was my weekend. I hope yours was equally as exciting. So today's topic is Get Your Instrumental Cue Reviewed. And, I didn't make a decision before the show, but maybe we should make the decision together. I said in the email that I would comment and answer any questions that you had. Do you guys want to vote on the cues with plus ones or minus ones? I think that maybe we shouldn't because it'll go faster. I think I've got 23 of them to get through. So if we vote, then it takes a while, slows things down. What do you guys think? If you think we should vote, hit a plus one. If you think we shouldn't vote and we should just get through them and get my comments, then minus one. How's that? Oh, look at that. Daryl Berman gave a yes. Then Daryl Berman gave a no. What the hell does that mean, Daryl? Fast is good. Okay, no vote.
I think the minus one's winning.
Okay, so no voting. Yay. I will use a paper ballot. Yeah, you know what? We're liable to have some hanging chads. That'd be a good name for a band, the Hanging Chads. I bet it already exists somewhere. Yeah, that's too easy, right? Let me scoot the microphone in a little bit. How's my level? Hey, Jesse. Hey, Ray. Hey, Trinidad. Paul, Dean, Jim, Patrick, Daryl. AM Cool. Tim Butler. Dan Cafferty. Bria's kicking me under the table. There you go. Subscribe down there in the corner, if you're not already subscribed. By the way, none of those apply. How about this one? We've got more than 10,000 subscribers, just in case I forgot to tell you last week. Woo! Thank you to our loyal subscribers for making this channel the most awesomest, famousest thing on YouTube. Don't forget to share with your grandma, because she probably watches YouTube all day since the cable company cut her off. And don't forget to like us, right? Okay, now we got that out of the way. So, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to play these cues. A few of you folks had questions for me that I will, in fact, answer. But we're going to listen to them. But and I'm going to comment. Now, everybody's wondering, gee, is he going to like my cue? Is he going to say it's awesome? Is he going to say it should be forwarded by taxi to a production music library, or a music supervisor, or a reality show editor? And if I say, no, something shouldn't, then you're going to go, but I've already got it in 2 libraries. or it's had a placement. So here's what I want to say before we get into the meat of this show, which is there are libraries and there are libraries. There are very inexpensive old Toyotas. Sorry, Bria drives a Toyota. It's a good Toyota, but the new ones are actually really good. But like, you know what I'm saying? If somebody drives there are beater cars. That's what the point I'm trying to make. If there are beater cars and there are Ferraris, and there are a lot of cars in the middle. So the same thing is true for music libraries. There are some that will take just about any music that's thrown at them because what do they care? They have a standard contract that everybody just checks a box and up it goes in the library. And then maybe someday it'll get licensed for something. Maybe lots of days it'll get licensed. But generally speaking, they're not actively pitching. They're not responding to search requests from supervisors. So it's kind of passive. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And then there are mid-level libraries, which are more prone to being selective. And those libraries will get involved in pitching. And then there are libraries that are what I would call high-end libraries that are extremely selective in that they won't just take good music. It's got to be good music that is right for their client base. So even though you may have killer orchestral music that would be awesome for like a film trailer, really awesome for a film trailer, it may be really sucky for a library that specializes in reality cues and just gets a ton of placements on reality shows. So what good is having a giant piece of orchestral music if their client base never needs that kind of thing? So even though you could sign with that library, that would be a bad choice of libraries for you to sign with. So that, and I want to go back and quickly revisit hoarding. And I'm not talking about the kind that makes it to a TV show on TLC. I'm talking about how supervisors hoard. I mentioned this, I think, in last week's show, and I got a lot of emails about it. Hoarding means that they get music forwarded to them by us, by other entities that they work with and request music from. And even though they may not use something on a particular episode that they're working on now, or a particular film, trailer, commercial, what have you, they like it. And they go, someday I'm going to have a need for that. So they drag it into a folder, and the folders are named by genre. And it could just sit there forever and never get used. It could sit there for a month and get used. It could sit there for 6 months, a year, 7 years. They go back when they need something. Let's say they're looking for marching band music, like John Philip Sousa, okay? And they find what they want for that particular commercial, which is a bunch of high school kids in a marching band marching to Subway to get some fresh, tasty meat on a slab of bread. And they find the one they want, but there were other ones that the supervisor got that were also really good, and he or she might think someday I might need other marching band music, so they stick it in their folder, and it sits there until that day comes or it doesn't. So just wanted to touch base on hoarding again, and with that, let us start listening to these instrumental cues, and let's think about stuff like melody and mix and structure. Does the cue sound like obviously quantized, kind of stiff, and which would be okay if it were like a 16-bit thing or 8-bit thing. And almost most importantly is what mood does it convey? So let's have a listen. The first one, should I mention, I'm going to have you guys decide. Did we say anything in the email about whether or not we were going to mention composers' names? I don't think we did, right?
I don't think we did.
And normally we don't. So you know what? If you guys want to out yourselves, you can. But just in case anybody, has anything negative, say, not me, but I'm talking about people in the chat room. Let's not put anybody in the hot seat. So the first one we're going to listen to is called Lyrical Grandeur. That was called Lyrical Grandeur. I really liked that cue a lot. I thought it was really well done. As I was listening to it, I was imagining one of those great battle scenes. It could be almost, any period. It could have been from Civil War, could have been from World War One, could have been from World War Two, where the battle's over, the sun has come up, the smoke is still on the battlefield, and there are a bunch of sadly dead soldiers laying on the field of battle. And maybe the colonel or the general or somebody is walking through looking at the dead soldiers. And on one hand, he's looking at them and he's sad, obviously, loss of life and these brave souls. And on the other hand, he's having moments where he's thinking about how brave they were and how heroic they were. So there was a little bit of both of those emotions, for me anyway, melded in there. And I'm sure you could apply that, not just the battle scene thing, but that cue to many other types of scenes. Donna Jiggly says, music is so weird. He listens to this and has a whole story. It's kind of what I do for a living. I mean, at least on behalf of you guys. Sad but grand, Sherry says. I agree. Nicely done. Let's see, old western, or it could be for an old western or a BBC documentary. End of patriotic scene in a movie, very nice, ballet-like. Interesting if it's a ballet about the battlefield. No, I'm kidding. Let's see, war movie for sure. Any military documentary. Oh gosh, what was the movie? Hacksaw Ridge. This would have been great in Hacksaw Ridge. Saving Private Ryan, Beaches of Normandy, After the Fact, Dunkirk. Yeah, all those things. So anyway, that was Lyrical Grandeur, and that absolutely, should be in libraries and should get placements. There you go. You get an A. Yay! All right. I just gave Marion Laird an idea for a ballet or an opera. Everybody loves a ballet about soldiers dying. They love that stuff. I actually went to an opera one time in New York City about Nazis. So anything's possible. Okay. Next one is called Glam Rock 11. That was called Glam Rock 11. How's that audience? Convincing? Just checking. Okay, so some thoughts that I jotted down. Number one, I'm not really sure that was glam rock, although I am not legitimately a glam rock expert. let's just say, haven't teased my hair, used any spray, or worn any high boots in a very, very, very long time. I think that the vocoder part, while catchy and kind of cool, you don't hear those very often. It could be used in something kind of comedic because there was something kind of funny and cute and quirky about it. But overall, the first thought that I had was, whoa. And it kind of pulled me out of if I were watching a scene in something. I mean, if it were, it made me think of the movie 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy, I think, back in like 1980 something. That could have been part of the score of that film. So it's kind of dated sounding. Maybe the vocoder is the guilty party that does that, because I don't think there has been a lot of vocoder use since then, although I could be wrong. I'm sure that artists like Deadmau5 or Marshmello or people like that probably use vocoders at big shows, and I just don't know because I'm not cool enough to go to them. But I would say that overall it sounded like activity, it sounded like motion, it sounded like the cops in 48 Hours on their way to something, but it did sound dated. I also noticed that the drums did not sound great. They were also kind of dated sounding and didn't sound modern or current, so that helped in making it sound kind of dated. And that they were actually loud by comparison to some of the rhythm guitar stuff that was going on that I felt was kind of the underlying theme that gave it the drive. So it kind of felt like the things that should have been more forward weren't, and the things that should have been pulled back a little bit to make them sit better in the mix weren't. So it was discombobulated. Not horrible, not a mess, not a tragedy. No, not a tragedy, but a little discombobulated. That's all I had. Let's see what you guys said. Revenge of the Nerds Part B. That was such a great movie, but it was only the original one. All the Revenge of the Nerds, like 2, 3, 4, 5, up to 20, they all sucked. That's right. Paul Croteau says 48 Hours, 1982. Axel Foley, I remember it well. DJ Web Productions. Hello, Michael. I'd like to become a member, but don't know where to start and have some questions. How could I get answers that may help me help you? By calling 1-800-458-2111. Got that number again? It's 1-800-458-2111. Call that number during West Coast business hours, and somebody way smarter than I am will answer your questions. Also, go to taxi.com. Go to our website. It's loaded with information, but thanks for asking, DJ Webb. Israel Tannenbaum said, could go a long way in the 80s Space Invaders video game. Okay. There we go. So now let's move on to number 3, which sounds like a dill pickle. It's called Delicatesse. Freya's dancing. I think it's Eddie Murphy Day on Taxi TV. Love that. Needed a cymbal right there. Really good structurally. Notice how it went to a breakdown. Now it's going to build back up. At a point. could you not love that? Um, it was dated, but it wasn't dated by accident. That had to be, very 80s sounding by intent. I think it was Jesse J. Peck said Earth, Wind, and Fire. Yeah, it had all kinds of Earth, Wind, and Fire licks all over it and grooves all over it. Had kind of a Stevie Wonder, dating back to the 70s, Intervision bass and kick thing, sound-wise, sonically going on. Very funky, very well played. Love the sound of some of the keyboard pads. Sometimes we'll send stuff back to the members and say this sound, had a dated synth pad. So somebody watching the show today is going to go, I heard a thing that Michael really liked, and it had a synth pad that's the same exact patch as one that I had in my thing. The difference is this one, I hope I'm right. Maybe the members watching the show will correct me and say, no, you are absolutely wrong, Michael. It's happened. But it sounds so obviously like it was supposed to be an 80s funk thing. And I thought all the instrument sounds were just perfect for it. I saw somebody in the chat say needs big horn thing. That would be great. I'm really excellent horns, samples, virtual horns. Got to be pretty darn good with your samples and all your articulations, everything to get that really right. But yeah, if you could pull that off, that would be cool. And you could do a mix with them or without them. But overall, let's see. I mentioned the structure. You notice how it started out, built up, broke down, and came back, boom, big, into the big finish again. Everything about this was an A for me. So, yay, good job on that. That was Delicatesse. You know what, though? Let me give you a piece of advice. As cool as that name is, and it just conjures up images of like corned beef on rye with mustard. Delicatesse might not be the best name for it. You want to pick a name for your cue that tells people what they're going to hear, puts them in a frame of mind, so that when an editor or a music supervisor is scanning a very long list and like a 10-point font on a computer screen looking for something that might be a good fit, because they're not going to sit there and audition every single thing that's in front of them on a playlist. They're going to go to the stuff that looks like visually it's a good fit from the description that the title evokes. So for something like that, you could even do something like Earth, Wind, and Flyers. Anybody would look at that and go, okay, I got it. That's going to sound a little bit like Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm trying to think of some other stuff. Obviously 80s funk, yeah, but you get the idea. Stuff that makes it a giveaway as to what they're going to hear will always get your cue used more often. Okay, next one. Let's drop some acid for this one. Let's see. Do I have any? Nope, fresh out today. Bria's got some. Thank you, Bria. I hope you're watching, Mr. McTavish. Your daughter just gave me a hit of what's that stuff called? Window pane. I'm kidding. I am joking. I'm seriously joking. Anyway, this one's called Mindbender. Let's have a listen. Okay, so the first thing I noticed about this was that I really liked the basic root melody where it started out with that little figure. That was cool. But then it started to wander off. John Brahaney, who was kind of the godfather of critiquing music, um, used to always call things cohesive or not cohesive. The melody became incohesive in that one. Kind of drifted off a little bit, and then later at the very end of the cue, it drifted off into like, what the heck was that? That little thing where it dropped down, used a pitch shifter and dropped the whole thing down. And it was a pretty, kind of like a mudslide waking up in the middle of the night. I went, whoa, what was that? You probably saw the expression on my face. So that was a little too surprising, I think. Um, the overall level was a little low, which, you might think, well, does that really matter? But it kind of does, because if you're an editor, a music supervisor, whoever on the industry pro side is auditioning music, and they're sitting there going, hitting the button. Do I like it? Next, nope. Do I like it? Nope, doesn't quite work with picture. Do I like it? What? I can't hear it. Nope, I don't like it. So they will skip past stuff if they have to strain to listen to it. I had to bring this one up. I had to turn the big volume knob up quite a bit to get it to be at a level that was kind of close to the other stuff. The other big ticket item for me was that it was kind of a almost a solo piano cue. It was very stripped down. It basically was just two hands. There might have been a second keyboard part in there, but the bottom line is, if the keyboard is so featured and so solo and the piece is so dependent on it, that instrument's got to sound really good. And that keyboard sound that she used sounded like a 30-year-old synthesizer. Actually, it sounded like one of those $69 Casios from back in the day that you just hit patch 1, patch 2, patch 3, and you go, okay, that one's kind of what I'm looking for. But it just didn't sound all that good, so that really hurt you. So here's what I would do, which is concentrate on the positive and go back and listen to the melody figure you played in the very beginning. Find a better sounding instrument. If you can get your hands on a real piano and have somebody record you playing this on a real piano, and also use a metronome, have a click in your ear so that you can stay on tempo, because you did tend to wander all over the place, and it just made it really hard to use. Somebody couldn't put that against picture because it's kind of not the same thing all the way throughout. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. Next up, we have one called Castle Air. Let's have a listen. Did you see me struggling not to cry? That's how good that was. It was beautifully played, beautifully written, beautifully executed on all levels. I know, it's rough listening to stuff coming out of my speakers through a microphone on your end, but I could tell that that was a great piano sound. Really nice touch on the keyboard, which is so important when you're playing this kind of music. It's one thing to get all the notes right. It's something else to get the tempo right. But to be able to make the notes speak and convey an emotion is a gift and a talent, and this person clearly has that. Some thoughts that came to mind, it's kind of lovingly feeling, you know what I mean? Somebody looking at something or someone or thinking back to a moment in time lovingly, reminiscing, had a little bit of hopefulness in there, appreciation. Oh gosh, what was, not Little Women, but there was another movie of that ilk, with some sisters wearing long fancy dresses with high collars, hanging out in the kitchen with mom. Maybe it was Little Women. I don't know.
Maybe it was.
Yeah. Anyway, there was a scene in that film that this would have been perfect for. You could do a version of this with mostly cello and some violas and violins brought in, but I would go light on the violas and violins, just lay heavy on the cello. I mean, comparatively to the other strings, but not heavy in the piece. But have two versions of it. Have a solo piano version and a version with strings. The only other comment, which I saw somebody else mention in the room, and frankly, the piece is so good that it's almost worth not saying this. It was slightly, and I'm underlining and italicizing the word slightly, slightly score-like in that it almost told the story of the scene rather than just conveying an emotion. There were times where it just walked up to the line and maybe put like a toe over the line of like, oh, now you're telling me the story. So it might make it a little bit hard to work in a scene. Then again, a lot of times they're going to score something like this anyway. Whoever's scoring the film is going to have, they may play it him or herself to make the money on the publishing side. Maybe they feel they can convey it best with their own hands. But this is definitely that's Class A work, and that could make it, that would find a home in a lot of libraries. And I can't say that there's a ton of demand for that stuff out there. I mean, certainly not as much demand as there would be today for like hip hop or EDM kind of stuff, but consistent demand over time for a piece like that. So really, really good job. Nicely done. Okay, I love the title of this next one. It's called Steel and Cheese. See what I mean? It absolutely conveys what it sounds like. Busy, sneaky, mischievous. Got a nice B section, structurally great. It's going to go back to the A, I bet. Variation on the A. It's really good. Yay. That was Kyle Sutton. He outed himself, I noticed, in the chat room, so I can say his name without bumming anybody out or embarrassing anybody. But I got to say, Kyle, excellent job on that. The title told me that it was going to be about something sneaky, and it was. Somebody in there mentioned Ratatouille, the movie, the animated movie from like, I don't know, 15 years ago. Would have been great for that. It would be great. What's the show that's got the baby kittens and all the baby animals? It's on like Animal Planet.
Probably just called like baby animals or something.
Bria clearly hates baby animals.
What?
Tisk. Anyway, yeah, there's a show, like puppies and kittens falling all over each other, or could be baby goats, but that would be a bad choice. Okay. Anyway, I think I need a drink after that. From Rockstar, who will be returning to this year's Road Rally coming up November 1st through the 4th in beautiful Los Angeles. I was thirsty, and boy, is that good. That was excellent. There's literally nothing about that I would fix. I can't tell if there was a tuba patch in there or not, but if it doesn't have a tuba, try a version with a little tuba in there. Little tuba, there's no such thing, is there? Except in an all-mouse band, which this would be perfect for. Okay, moving on. This one is called Another Challenge. That's a good name. That was called Another Challenge. I want to say hello to Pat Wara. I just saw him in the chat room. I don't know, 10 days ago, or whatever it was, a week ago, I was at the Hawaii Songwriters Festival, which I never miss, and had the pleasure of speaking to Pat Wara and his lovely wife for, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes outside of the ballroom the other night. It was really nice hanging out with him. I see his name in our database for some reason forever, all the time, so it was really nice hanging out. Okay, so back to Another Challenge. I didn't think that the title, I expected it to sound like music you would hear in a challenge-based reality show, like The Challenge. Didn't quite sound like that. It sounded like one of those biker TV shows. What was the one I'm trying to think of that's not on the air anymore?
Sons of Anarchy.
Sons of Anarchy. Thank you. There's a new one coming up, a Latino version of Sons of Anarchy that's coming on Fox or FX soon. That looks kind of BA. So that's good because that means that they're going to need some really, well, they've probably already done the episodes for this year, but they're going to need kind of edgy blues rock. So categorically, genre speaking, that was blues rock. And it didn't sound badass enough. It was kind of polite. I was almost laughing to myself, not at you, but with myself, a laughing party of one, that it would be great tongue-in-cheek, juxtaposed against the scene of a bunch of kids like on razor scooters or something, pulling out of a driveway, going to get into some form of trouble or, track somebody down. And this music starts and then they get on their scooter. So this would be funny in that context because it just, what it is, but it doesn't quite get there. Like you couldn't use it in a scene of Sons of Anarchy. But we all know what it is. So really, rather than waiting for that once-in-a-lifetime placement to come around and hoping that somebody finds you, I would take the approach of making it more badass. How do you do that? The drums felt way too stiff, and they could have had more of a room sound. They need to feel sloppier, but convincing and banging. The guitar part should have been nastier and bigger. The bass should have been locked super tight to the kick drum. More distortion overall and a better mix. So while you might add all that up and go, wow, my piece really sucked, it didn't. It was okay and heading in the right direction. It shows promise, which is good. I would be honest with you and tell you if it didn't show promise, but there's some promise in there. You just need to... In some cases, people would say polish the diamond or smooth out the rough edges. In your case, you need to add the rough edges, okay? There we go. Awesome. Moving on to the next one, which is called Tough Decision. Okay, that was called Tough Decision. I think it was appropriately titled. It was somebody, there are all kinds of scenes that I could see that being used in. It was sort of slightly investigative. Try and say that 3 times in a row. Like somebody is looking for a clue. It could even go a little scientific, like CSI, like, and they're looking at a microscope and trying to figure something out. They're having flashbacks, looking at whatever little things they see in the microscope and imagining how the crime or the murder took place. It could work for that. Flashbacky. It definitely had a flashback vibe to it. I made a note to look back. Same thing as a flashback, kind of. In the beginning of it, it had a drum figure that came in. And it was a cool drum figure. I went, whoa, what was that? Oh, nice idea. I like that. And then I realized if it got that much attention from me, I think it was a little bit loud. It kind of pulled my head out of the emotion and the overall effect of the cue. So I would look at bringing that down. I made a note that a tad more subtle. It felt like it was on the fence. It didn't really commit to being organic. As far as the instrumentation, it didn't really commit to being electronic, and sometimes some of the samples sounded like older samples or poorly chosen samples that made it sound like, are you trying to do this hybrid? Because the piece didn't really lend itself all that well to being hybrid, but then again, the kind of investigative, scientific-y, CSIE-ish aspect of it kind of lent itself well to the electronic stuff. It just didn't feel committed to one thing or another thing or the third thing, which would be a hybrid. But overall, it was pretty much in the ballpark. It kind of fit in that. I'm trying to think of what genre you would call it. Wasn't a tension cue. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was pretty good. Just it needs to be brought. Let's see. People are mentioning Stan's name, so yeah, I can mention the fact that it was from Stan Morris. Maybe he's not in the chat room today.
He is.
Oh, he is. Okay. Anyway, pretty good job overall. Melodically, emotionally, spiritually, from all those perspectives, you're right there. You just need to take some of the instrumentation and improve the way it sounds, I think. And check out what I said about the drum thing. I think, actually, Bria, can you play the top of that one again? I want to make sure I'm right about that. I like the fact that you brought in that pad right after the drums because it kind of validates the drum intro or the drum entrance, I mean. But I still feel like they are too loud. Okay, you can go ahead and kill it. Anyway, you're on your way with that one. Put it this way, it's definitely one worth working more on. Okay, moving on. The next one is called Lament. Titles don't get any better than that. I thought that was excellent. Just beautifully composed. The arrangement was great. The emotion was great. I mean, clearly full of lament. I made a note here that said, lost love, lost dog in slow mo. Can't you just see the memories of the lost dog in slow mo? And then I wrote lost goat, another bad joke. But it was beautiful. It was just beautifully executed. Somebody said, Oscar Schindler, wish I'd saved more. I'm not really sure how that. Okay, I see. Oscar Schindler saying that he wish he'd saved more people, and this is the lamentful music underneath it. Just great. I mean, I don't think there's. Put it this way: I want to say there's not a library in the world that wouldn't take that if they had the right clientele to use it. But it's beautifully done. A+ on that one. Great job. Okay, moving on. We are halfway through. Oh, baby. I guess I should start giving shorter comments and less goat jokes. The next one's called Cardiac. Perfect. Gotta love it already. All right. That was called Cardiac, and I've got to say, the way it started out was absolutely wonderful. Sounded like a heart pumping blood. And then, probably 15 or 20 seconds into it, I kind of lost track of time, maybe, but all of a sudden there was this weird transition that just made me go, huh? What? It wasn't a fatal mistake, it just didn't need to be like that. I did like the way very much that it kind of gathered steam and intensity as it went along. Could clearly work in a CSI type situation. What do they call those? Procedurals? Yeah, I think so. I think they're called procedural shows. Could absolutely work in something like that, something where they're investigating, again, in a lab or a crime scene. It would work really well for that. And I know that our listings push for and ask for, and I personally recommend all the time, kind of, building, crescendo, and then boom, hard ending. That one actually felt a little too big and a little too hard for the type of cue that it was. It almost made too much of an exclamatory statement at the end that wouldn't go if you were using, because obviously it's extremely rare. Just in case you guys don't know this, some of you may, some of you may not. It's rare that they use a whole cue. It's extremely rare. So, a lot of times they'll take like the intro and maybe 5 or 10 or 15 seconds from the middle and then just cut it to the ending. So hearing that ending there, you'd be hard pressed. It didn't really work that well coming off the build on the end or the crescendo, and trying to imagine it being cut onto any of the mid sections of that cue would be difficult as well. So that's about the only thing I would think to change on that one. But otherwise, really good job. You get it. Congratulations. Yay. You won a free car, but not from this show. Next we have Night Together, and this person actually asked me some specific questions. Too bad I wrote notes all over them, so now I can't read the darn questions.
You want me to read them?
Let's see if I can translate. How's the composition? Something, the quality. Can you read it off of there?
Yeah.
Please.
How is the composition? Is the quality good enough for being forwarded? What types of requests would this work for?
Okay. So how's the composition? Is the quality good enough to get forwarded by taxi? And what types of requests would this work for? All fair questions, and this cue is called Night Together. So, not funny, but ironic to me because I spend most of my life trying to, be observant enough in what I see to be able to pull from that self-educating process and pass stuff along to you guys. Obviously, I learned from our screeners, I learned from friends of mine in the industry, and I learned by watching way too much television and thinking about the music that's in it. And look at this. I can't find the notes that I wrote for that song or that instrumental. Here it is. Okay. The ironic thing to me is I'm listening to it and going, this is really pretty. Okay, the piano sample's not great. I hear a lot of compression on it, but it's really pretty. And I kept going back to really pretty. And then I moved on to, but what is it telling me? What kind of scene would it work for? Where would I hear this? What would the characters be doing? And I couldn't come up with anything. I was drawing blanks. And then I look up at the list, and you guys are like, I would work in this kind of scene and that kind of scene. And then Jesse J. Peck, what did Jesse say?
Like dancing on a porch.
Yeah, dancing, like cheek to cheek dancing on a veranda or something totally out of character for Jesse. It's like, dude, how much limoncello have you had? Anyway, I thought that comment was great. I mean, you're really thinking about it. I thought it was funny coming from you, only because I know you as a bit of a joker. But I really struggled to find what it could be used for, and you guys didn't struggle with it at all. I literally saw like 10 comments as soon as I looked up. So clearly, as it says on our critique forums, one person's opinion doesn't mean squat. There you go. I did feel like it was too long. It felt too long to me. It didn't seem to really go anywhere. And again, I could be totally off, and you guys felt absolutely differently about it. But it felt like it was just going on to the point where at one point I remember thinking, you didn't hold my interest. I kind of drifted off and started thinking about goats or something. And then all of a sudden it had a... what do you call that when you change the octave? I think I actually... Why can I not think of a modulation? And the modulation just felt like kind of dated and cheesy. Modulations, generally speaking, are not in vogue. Haven't been for a while. And I know people are going to chime in and say, oh, such and such a song has modulations in it. Or this piece has a modulation. There are always examples that... break the rule of thumb, but the rule of thumb is modulations are old school. Maybe they'll come back again, but at the moment they're fairly old school. And it's also a device that's probably more often used in an actual score rather than a cue, because if an editor or a music soup or a music editor was trying, whichever, if they were trying, or if they was trying, to put that piece of music up against a scene and the modulation happened. A modulation musically tells you, oh, we've moved on to something different. Could be a different emotion, could be a different day, could be a cut going from indoors to outdoors. It could be a shot of his face falling in love with her to a cut to her face falling in love with him. A modulation almost always signifies something going on in the picture. I don't think there's a rule book that says that. It's just something that I've noticed and I'm pretty darn sure of. And this modulation being where it was makes it really hard to use the piece. So I would just take the modulation out, make the piece shorter, and give it more forward momentum, which is a phrase we like around here. Apparently we have to move our hands a lot when we say it. It's the basic components were there. It was pretty clearly. I didn't pick up on the emotion and the potential of types of scenes it would work for, but everybody else did. So let that be your head of steam, and then make it move down the track and take it to a destination. It felt like it was meandering to me, personal opinion, but overall pretty good. Okay, moving on. Let's see. That one was called Night Together, right? And this one is called The Spy Who. Woohoo! Barry Manilow is the king of modulation. Somebody said in the chat. What does that tell you? This note. Minor seventh? Somebody got a little trigger happy over there. It felt like you killed it too soon. Or was that on the?
No, that was the end.
That was on the tape.
No, that was me.
That was on the cassette.
I don't want it to go into the next song.
Gotcha.
Before and it's awkward.
Got it. All right. So that was very appropriately titled "The Spy Who." Obviously, a take on "The Spy Who Loved Me" or "The Spy Anything." It was great for a spy piece. Somebody said they saw Mission Impossible last night, and it would be perfect for something like that. Polly saw me asking Bree. I thought I heard like a minor seventh in there. That was the one thing that rubbed me, and like rub, like if you're conducting an orchestra and you hear a rub over in the oboe section, somebody's got a lame note. The conductor would call out the rub, but Polly says it was an F minor, dissonant note was a B natural. I'm always natural. People always tell me, be natural. Yeah, I get it. Anyway, it took my head out of the scene. And it would be limiting as to how many people could use it for how many scenes because of that, because somebody said the words dark stuff. There was some dark stuff in there, and that had to be what they were talking about. So it did change the nature, the melodic and emotional nature of the cue by having that in there. It took it from being mysterious, a little tension building. I mean, it wasn't primarily tension building, but there was some in there. Definitely people wearing black turtlenecks, good spy stuff, and really well executed. And then did that, and it was like, huh? It caught me off guard. And when it kept coming back, it still felt like it was out of place. It was compositionally interesting, but challenging to use because of it. Other than that, I thought that was really, really well done. So yay. Okay, moving on to next one called Off to a Good Start. My producer couldn't produce a good stop at the end of that. Thank you. That was a tough one, though. They were right up against each other. Obviously, we needed more leader on that cassette. Anyway, I like that one. Can you play it again? It was really short, and I liked it. And
2 seconds.
it was what, 32?
32 seconds.
32 seconds. Okay, so that immediately tells me, because I'm so sleuthy, that that was written for a commercial.
Play it again.
Yeah. Back to school for the little ones. But the trombones make it not really, it's youthful and fun, but the trombones make it too old and sophisticated. But the piano and the rhythm, the happy clappy stuff all works. Anyway, I like everything about it but the trombones. And other people may like the trombones, go, oh, that makes it different. They do. I just don't know the obvious uses for that cue. You're pulling yourself away from the obvious uses. You may get somebody who goes, wow, that's brilliant compositionally because that person thought of something really cool and different to do. Maybe they would like it because of that. My gut tells me it's a challenge. Not a horrendous mistake by any stretch. Otherwise, really, really good. Okay, trying to pick up a little time here. I gotta pick up a lot of time here. This one is called Battleborn. And the questions are, how's the mix? How can I improve the sound quality of the piece? How to make it sound more full and more exciting? It's a tall order, let's go. Okay, I'm going to answer your specific questions. How is the mix? Not bad. You're in the ballpark, but you haven't totally nailed it. How can I improve the sound quality of the piece? Honestly, at no point did I think to myself, this is deficient sound quality-wise. I was listening to other stuff, so I can't tell you for sure if the sound quality was absolutely perfect, but it was pretty darn good. How do you make it sound more full and more exciting? The thought that I had, and let me state before I tell you the thought that I had, that I thought this was pretty darn good. And I don't hand that out easily. I'm not saying that to be nice or anything, because I'm really not that nice. But the thought that I had was, I love to cook. And I never use a recipe. I just open up the fridge, generally speaking, whatever we've got in there, and go, oh, look at that. Leftover piece of steak from the grill last night, blah, 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 blah. And I throw it all, in a skillet or a wok or whatever I do, and I make dinner. 80% of the time, it turns out pretty darn good. 20% of the time, it tastes like crap, and I wish that we'd just gone out for dinner. Um, this was like a stew where you've got the chunks of meat, you've got little pieces of carrot, little pieces of pea, little pieces of potato, the salt, the pepper, the gravy master, all that stuff thrown in there. Oh, I forgot the pearl onions, which give me gas, so I don't put them in mine. But it just didn't come together. It had all these really good elements. That's what I'm trying to say. There, better way to say it. It had a lot of really good elements, very convincing. Compositionally, really cool. Mix wise, pretty darn cool. Emotion wise, excitement level. The fact that it was in fact emphatic. The surprise ending, which was kind of cool. I was debating that for a second, but I think I really liked it. So it had all these great elements, but I would say that it needed some editing, especially on the first 30 seconds. It just felt like it didn't get to the point quickly enough. And I would have to hear it re-edited to be able to judge the mix as well as I would like. But I thought, that was from Fentamilonis. He's outed himself. So yes, it was Arnold says Stu Q. Yes, really darn good, or pretty darn good, very good. Yeah, I liked it. Just needs some work, but you're so close to nailing that one. I also saw that Sherry Marcus Milano said that she saw the Eagles last night. I've seen them so many times. I actually knew them. I was there working under the same roof when they did the One of These Nights record, got to see the opening show of the One of These Nights tour. And I was already an Eagles fan before that, but, got to be in their control room a lot when they were doing that record, and love the Eagles. And I got to say, to me, the coolest thing about the Eagles now is the fact that Glenn Frey's son, Deacon, is in the band. Can you imagine? I mean, I'm sure he grew up knowing, oh God, what's his name? What's the other key Eagle? Glenn Frey and who's the other? Bria's like, I don't know. There. Why can't I think? Don Henley. Don Henley is famous for being ultra picky and maybe not the nicest guy all the time. Certainly in that context, you got to really live up to a very high standard to walk into a room with Don Henley. And so could you imagine being Glenn Frey's kid and you get the phone call, hey, we know your dad passed away. We're all still brokenhearted, but we want to go on tour. And we want you to play all the stuff that your dad did. I mean, it'd be so hard. It took such courage on his part. The first show he did with them was like a stadium show. And first of all, if I were him, I would have been crying the whole time. Very, very, very hard to fill his dad's shoes. And then there's the I'm scared to death factor. Being on a stage with Don Henley, who's probably, whispering into a microphone, needs to sing better harmonies on this, needs to play guitar better on that. But the kid pulled it off with grace, style, and it was just awesome. I got to say, I teared up watching him do that first stadium show. So the fact that he's really grown into his dad's shoes, just what a legacy. I hope that Glenn is watching, and Deacon, you rock for pulling that off, dude. Okay, next one is called, oh, by the way, Fen Battleborn was a good title for that. Bright Future is the next one. Let's have a listen. Okay, this is a classic case of emotionally uplifting. So you get an A for that, and appropriately titled, I may add, called "Bright Future." Be great for a TV commercial about kids going off to college, or I just bought life insurance, so it doesn't matter what happens to me now because my family will be happier without me, and they'll be rich. You know what I'm trying to say. It's emotionally uplifting. There's no other way to describe it. It really nailed that well. There was something I saw several of you picked up on, and I don't know if it's just the engineer in me or the producer in me, but it sounded like there was a double on the piano part that sounded like a banjo or maybe an ukulele, and it was kind of cool. And maybe a normal person who's not in our industry wouldn't listen to it like that and sit there and spend half of the cue trying to figure out what that was. So overall, I liked it. At some points, I felt like I drifted away from it, even though sectionally it had some contrast. It seemed to have some forward momentum. And clearly, you've been learning stuff from Taxi TV and from the screeners and everything. Something about it, and I wasn't able to put my finger on it. It felt like it was 15% away from wonderfulness, and I honestly don't know. I don't know if anybody anybody in the chat room nailed it.
It felt like the banjo sound was like competing with the piano because it was in the same register and
right.
the same tone.
Bria said the banjo felt like it was competing with the piano because the same register, same tone, and same level. I mean, it was just barely underneath it. Anyway, but you know what? I was a little bit famous for doing that back in my studio days, where I would take something unusual and blend it with something else. And I probably stole that idea mostly from Fleetwood Mac, but subtlety. If you notice it and go hunting for it and try to identify it, it might be too loud. If you notice it at all, it might be too loud. Sometimes it's just better. You're not trying to impress other engineers or other musicians. You're trying to create a cue that conveys an emotion. First and foremost, it supports or conveys an emotion, and you did that really well. So everything else is just salt and pepper on that one. It doesn't need a whole lot of work. And I just had a brilliant idea because the show that I had planned for next week fell apart on me. The guest that I really wanted, who wants to do the show, can't do it next Monday. So I'm thinking, rather than this one going 20 minutes long, I've still got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more to go. I've gotten through 15 today. So I'll tell you what. Next week's show will be part 2 of this, and Bria will send out an email, and we will take another 8 or 9, the first 8 or 9 cues that come in from different people, just because we want to give other people a chance. I will address those cues, and we'll do more of this next week, okay? That way I don't have to struggle to try and get another guest in. And I enjoyed this. I enjoyed doing it. I hope you guys are learning from it and enjoy listening to it. I hope so. Otherwise, don't bother tuning in next week because you'll think it sucks. And, really the reason that I want to go now, you guys know the reason, right? I want to go stare at the picture of my goat. Look at the eyes on that goat, he says, lovingly staring into the eyes of his probably not future goat. Look at the eyes on that thing. Don't they look like Volvo headlights on the new ones? On the XC90? Yeah, that is a Volvo XC90 in furry form right there. Anyway, great job, you guys. I mean, come on. There was a lot of stuff in there that was really, really, really good. And Sherry loves my goat. I haven't gotten my goat yet, but I really do have a feeling that the Lasco family is going to own at least a couple of goats in the very near future. You know what? Our next door neighbor we live like, in suburbia, but by California standards, we have like a medium to large yard. So we've got enough room for a goat. That means our backyard is deeper than 6 feet. Our first house literally had like a 12-foot backyard. It was ridiculous. Oh my gosh, now they're talking about guns. You can't talk about guns when we're talking about my goat, okay? That's not cool. Glockenspiel. Not the 9mm Glockenspiel. Got it. Okay, they're being funny. Anyway, our next door neighbor just rescued a goat. So, the Lascos were always trying to keep up with the Joneses. They got a goat, we got to have a goat. At one point, they had 6 pit bulls in our backyard. No comment. I love my neighbors. Anyway, have a great week. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you all for submitting that great music. We will see you next week on another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Bye, you guys.